Welcome to the Prophecy Club. Our topic today is war talk. Russia is apparently about to go to war, and our State Department has issued a command that all U.S. citizens are to leave Russia now, not a request. U.S. State Department issues dire warning. Americans should leave Russia immediately. Those are war words. You don't hear those kind of... Matter of fact, my 69 years, I don't think I've ever heard something like that said unless it was a war. It says the U.S. State Department has issued a warning. What is already being described as the most dire warning ever seen. To Americans in Russia, leave immediately. Specifically, the State Department told Americans, parenthesis, U.S. citizens should not travel to Russia, and those residing or traveling in Russia should depart Russia immediately. Here's the exact wording. The Russian government began a mobilization of its citizens to the armed forces in support of its invasion of Ukraine. Now, in case you missed that, Putin went on national TV saying he was calling up, now this is what he told everybody, 300,000 conscripts. In other words, you have to show up. Whether you volunteered or not, you have to show up. 300,000 called to the military, but several sources say, no, it's not 300,000. It's more like 1.2 million. Okay, and I don't know the exact number that's in our military, but something like 30,000 comes to mind. Maybe, I hope it's a whole lot more than that. But what I'm trying to do is say, if he's calling up 1.2, even if he's calling up 300,000, you don't do that unless you're preparing for a war. He goes on to say, U.S. consular assistants should prevent their departure from Russia and conscript dual nationals for military service. So Russia is not letting military-age young men, and maybe even women too, leave. They have canceled all flights outside of Russia. In other words, anybody that can fight for Russia is going to be made to fight for Russia. Says U.S. citizens should not travel to Russia, and those residing or traveling in Russia should depart Russia immediately while limited commercial travel options remain. We remind U.S. citizens that the right to peaceful assembly and freedom of expression are not guaranteed in Russia. Avoid all political or social protests and do not photograph security personnel at these events. Russian authorities have arrested U.S. citizens who have participated in demonstrations. I'm telling you, these are fighting words. I'm telling you that Russia is getting ready for a war. And here's your warning. Here's your warning. Now, what goes with that? Food shortages goes with that. A lot of things go with that. This type of warning, the State Department issues about countries where the U.S. is going to war. I agree. And the State Department has good cause to think we're going to war. Why? Because they are causing it. How are they causing it? I'll show you. Secretary of State Antony Blinken told Ukraine can use Western weapons against territories seized by Russia. What? Okay, what he just said is we're sending you all of the bullets that you need, and we're giving you a few fingers to pull the trigger. Just go ahead and start shooting at Russia. Those are fighting words. This is the way a world war starts. As I've said before, February the 22nd of 2022, the Third World War started, and the Russian bear is going to continue to rampage until he has 3 teeth in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it, and they said thus unto him, arise and devour much flesh. So we're only beginning to see the early phases of the Russian bear beginning to devour much flesh. Now, I know she's killed a lot of people in the past, but the prophecy is talking about when the bear starts rampaging, when she gets 3 ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it, and that's talking about 3 nations that Russia gobbles up. Oh, and apparently, from what we've got here today, they're about to gobble those 3 nations up, and this World War III will not stop until Armageddon. Go read Ezekiel 38 and 39. You see Russia is still there. Russia is coming down to attack Israel at Armageddon. So this is the same war. It will continue now right up till the time that Jesus returns. So he says, Ukraine, it's okay. Go ahead and use United States weapons we've given you to attack Russia. Those are fighting words. The territories he seems to be referring to are the areas of Luhansk, Donetsk, Kherson, and Zaporizhzhia. Now, I don't know how you count that, whether you count that to 3 or you count that to 4, but those could be 3 ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it. So those are now officially gobbled up because they took a vote, and like 97% voted to join Russia. Well, why wouldn't they? They're already conquered anyway. So it's like, okay, you win, because if I don't let you win, I'm going to be dead. So it may be that Russia just put 3 bones in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it, 3 ribs. The people in those areas voted, and Blinken says the U.S. will not recognize that vote. What's so funny about that is they don't recognize it when Trump wins, but of course when they win, they expect the whole world to recognize it. Now, this next thing is also hilarious. From UPI, it says EU seeks new sanctions on Russia after sham annexation votes in Ukraine. Okay, so the U.S. calls the vote that Russia took for the 4 nations to come back into Russia, America calls that a sham. But they expect all of the other nations of the world to accept their voting, their sham voting, as genuine, the one that put JB in power. I want you to also notice they're using paper ballots. They're not using Dominion voting machines. So probably their voting is a lot more accurate than what ours is. So this is the pot calling the kettle black. Reuters says EU vows to protect energy network after sabotage of Russian gas pipeline. By now you've heard about this. That 2 pipelines were attacked in 3 different places. And, of course, everybody's wanting to know, well, who would be doing it? It's probably not Russia because of their pipelines. I don't know who did it. But, again, these are the kind of things that you see that start wars. Now, where's this going? It's going to escalate until Russia finally attacks America in a surprise nuclear attack. Russia knows that if she comes up, knocks on the door, puts up the dukes, and says, come outside, boy, we're going to fight, that Russia would probably lose in a fair fight face-to-face. But Russia knows that's not the way to do it. Instead, wait until it's like rain on a sunny day, when no one is expecting it, then launch a surprise nuclear attack in the early morning hours. It starts with EMP attacks, a central, an eastern, and a western EMP attack high up in the atmosphere. That EMP fries all the computer chips. Not a computer chip works. That is, unless it's protected, which, by the way, I guess I'd send you to EMPShield.com. And if you use promo code PROPHECY, they'll give you a $50 discount. EMP, Electromagnetic Pulse, EMPShield.com, promo code PROPHECY. I have one on my house, and I have one on both of our cars. EMPShield.com. $50 discount for prophecy. Now, let's go on. So, why were the Russian gas lines destroyed, or at least sabotaged? Well, now EU has put itself in a real jam because they really are about to run out of natural gas, and there's pretty much no place they can get it. Do you recall when Trump was in power, he went over to Germany and said, what are you doing buying all this gas and oil from Russia? Don't you know it's going to make you beholden to Russia? Well, who do we buy it from? You should be buying it from us. So no one said it. A lot of people are saying it might be the Biden administration. Again, nothing good is going to come out of that one. Let's go on. Bank collapse in China. Banks preparing for bank runs and being cut off from the SWIFT system. Remember, that's what I told you. Okay, the SWIFT system has to do with coins and paper. And I've told you several different times, several different ways, the prophecies say that we're going to a new digital system, specifically finalwakeupcall.info, which I do not recommend most things on that site. But there is one really good article, and it says that we're coming to a digital system, and it's going to be based upon the cell phone. We've talked about it, so I'll move on. But anyway, it says, it has been reported by Reuters that the worst-case scenarios that is being considered by the Chinese commercial banks and the Industrial Commercial Bank of China will be cut out of the dollar system. This means that they will be cut out of the dollar, and as a result, they will not be able to access U.S. dollar settlements. Do you think they're going to put up with that? I do not. I think that they have already made themselves another system. It's not called the SWIFT system. It's called the SIPS system. We've had articles on that we've talked about too. So what we're really doing is forcing the other nations out of using the dollar, which is going to crash the dollar, into something else, a new SIPS system. What sounds like it's terrible, it's not terrible. They're just going to move to another system, a system that the U.S. does not control. It goes on to say these banks are also considering the fact that their customers would overreact should the branches in Hong Kong run out of the U.S. dollar currency. Run out of dollar currency. There's no such thing. It's all zeros in a computer. This can end up causing the biggest financial crisis in the history of Hong Kong if these Chinese banks are cut out of the U.S. dollar. They are, because they are of their own choice, going to another one. Here's the question. The question is, since like in the 70s, the U.S. made a deal with Saudi Arabia to protect them militarily if they would only sell their crude oil in U.S. dollars. But 2 weeks ago, Xi Jinping went over to China to talk about finances. They have not announced what came out of that meeting. But when they do, what happens if all of a sudden Saudi Arabia says, we're not going to sell crude oil in dollars anymore. We're not going to sell it in dollars. Instead, we're only selling it in yuan. Now, all of a sudden, all the world drops the dollar. The value of the dollar starts dropping like a rock. I heard it said someplace that you can drop a rock in the deepest part of the ocean, and it takes 2 hours for the rock to hit the bottom of the ocean. Well, when the dollar starts dropping, it might just take that long before it hits the bottom. Let's talk about Joseph's Kitchen. I actually cooked this loaf of bread you're seeing here. Takes me about 10 minutes to put the ingredients together, put it into a bread machine, push a button, 2 hours, 20 minutes later, I get a loaf of bread out like that. Now, if you cut that loaf of bread that weighs about 3 pounds, the loaves you get in the store have most of the good stuff removed. The loaves you get in the store are about a pound. That's 3 pounds because it's got the good stuff still in it. Cut that into 14 slices, and if I eat a slice in the morning and the afternoon, I'm satisfied. So on that basis, one loaf can sustain, I didn't say it's everything we want, can sustain one person for a week. Based upon that, it'll get you excellent nutrition. It tastes good, long storage life, 10 minutes to combine the ingredients, 2 hours, 20 minutes to make it. Other wheat that you order arrives in paper bags, which means bugs, rice, humidity can get a hold of it and ruin it. But at Joseph's Kitchen, they send it out in 100 mil thick buckets. Gives you long shelf life. It's stackable. There's some nitrogen infuses that hopefully gives it much longer shelf life, kills bugs and things like that. Easily resealable, keep in a climate-controlled area. And they have it in stock. This is an actual picture of part of the warehouse. Here's another picture of these. Actually, each one of those boxes holds 2,500 pounds of wheat. And I think they've got 54 of those boxes, a bunch of them. So Joseph's Kitchen can ship it to you right now. You go to most of these places, they say out of stock. So here's what you want to do. Everybody needs to get a machine package. These are the things that you need to grind the wheat berries. Put them into a grinder. 30 seconds later, you have flour. You put that into the bread machine along with 6 other ingredients. Push a button. 2 hours, 20 minutes later, you have a nice hot loaf of whole wheat bread. Then you have to decide how much food you want. You want food 2 people 1 year, 4 people 1 year, 6 people 1 year. And if you want to make certain you have it when the electricity goes down, you can also get yourself a solar generator, all at josephskitchen.com. josephskitchen.com. I read this the other day. I've read it several times recently, so I'm not going to read everything. But I'm going to make a point. Dimitri Duduman probably the most trusted man to hear from God outside of the King James Bible, had an angel visit him, and the angel showed him a bear that was asleep. As the bear started waking him up, it started growing angry. Soon it became larger than the forest floor. It became larger and continued to become angrier. That's Russia. It began to paw the ground. That's right now. So that when its paw would hit the ground, the earth would shudder. That's probably talking about the Ukraine war. The bear continued to devastate all that stood in his path until it came upon some men with sticks. That's probably NATO, trying to fend it off, but it just runs over him. By this time, the bear had grown so large it simply crushed the men underfoot and continued to rampage. I was stunned. I said, what does this mean? At first, they thought the Russian bear was dead. As it would begin to stir once again, they will consider it harmless. That's in the past, and to a certain degree, even today. Suddenly, it will grow strong once more with purpose and violence. That is where we are right now. That prophecy is very near being fulfilled. Headline, covert intel already loaded on ships heading for Ukraine. The United States just won't knock it off. They're shipping 18 more HIMARS, which is a multiple launch rocket system, to Ukraine. We are actively and indirectly fighting Ukraine, fighting with Ukraine against Russia. We are in war with Russia right now. So when Russia is calling up 300,000 troops, they're not calling them up to fight Ukraine. Ukraine's not a problem. I don't even think they're calling them up to fight the other Luhansk and Donetsk and the other one. I don't think that's a problem either. I think it's definitely NATO and probably America. Look at this picture. This is a picture of 18 HIMARS heading over to Ukraine to be used on the Russians, and they were made in America. Why are they doing this? Well, see, Moloch wants to take out America. It's the last Christian nation. It's the wall that stands between him and putting his man, the Antichrist, the beast, on the throne. So how does he take out America? Well, he's already tried drugs and just Hollywood, just about everything else. But he hadn't taken it out of America all the way. So the way he's trying to do it is to get our enemy, a nation that's big enough and strong enough, Russia, to take us out by attacking Russia. So this is Moloch getting Russia to take out America. Now that's on one level, but what it really is, for she saith in her heart, this is Revelation 18, she saith in her heart, I said a queen, and I'm no widow, and shall see no sorrow. Therefore shall our plagues come in one day, death, mourning, and famine. For strong is the Lord God who judgeth her. It is Jesus that is doing this. Why is Jesus doing this to America? Because America has walked away from him. Grandsons of Christians, great-grandsons of Christians and their daughters went off to the godless college and walked away from Jesus. Now they're speaking bad about him. They turned around and stuck their finger in his eye, and they've told him to hit the road. So God says, okay, well, if you're not going to be blessed, then you have to be cursed. If you're not going to walk with me, you're walking with the devil. And if you're walking with the devil, I am the righteous judge, and I will give to you those things which you so richly deserve. The article goes on to say, this more than doubles the number of systems Ukraine has in service, which is 16 HIMARS, now adding 18 more. So what they're sending is 18 HIMARS, 150 armed vehicles, to cut it quickly, 150 tactical vehicles, 40 trucks, 80 trailers, 2 radars for unmanned aerial systems, 20 multi-mission radars. In other words, we are sending what we would normally use to defend America over to attack Russia. So does that mean we're not going to have any military equipment to defend ourselves when Russia attacks? In other words, we're basically saying, here you go. I only got one pistol, but I'm going to give it to you to go shoot the Russian. So we make the Russians mad. Russians come after us. Oh, we don't have a pistol anymore. We don't have anything to defend ourselves. We send it to Ukraine to be used on the Russians. That made the Russians mad. That makes the Russians want to attack us, and we don't have any weapons. Continuing in the article, major troop massing in Kaliningrad. Serious developments in the Russian enclave of Kaliningrad Oblast. A very major chunk of newly called up reserves are being deployed there. What? Russia is calling up people that did not volunteer, but he's making them join his military to fight. And apparently, this is not just, well, here, let me read it. A huge amount of military gear is already staged there, waiting to be manned. 70-plus warships are presently harbored there. Analysts are now starting to believe it. And they may, he says may be planning to use these forces to cut off the Baltics, meaning Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. Those could be the three ribs in the mouth of it, too. So we've got several candidates, as well as Poland, from the EU swiftly. This is why Poland, Bulgaria, and the U.S. have been telling citizens to leave Russia immediately. Over the past 2 days, analysts are now openly thinking, look at this. Russia may be getting ready to attack NATO. Now, if Russia attacks NATO, there is no question. A lot of blood. I mean, in my 69 years, I've never seen this. Here it is. By the way, watchman, Ezekiel 33:6 says that if the watchman sees the sword coming, and if he blows the trumpet, and the people be not warned, if the people don't listen to the warning, then their blood is on their own head. But if he doesn't blow the trumpet, then their blood is on his head. Meaning, if you are a watchman, and if you're watching right now, you are, if you're not sending this out to your other friends, neighbors, relatives, regardless of whether they're going to like you or continue to be your friend, if you're not sending this out, you have to understand, if they die because they didn't know this information, it's on you. You are going to have to explain that to Jesus. So I don't want to have to explain that to Jesus, so I don't worry about my friends. I don't worry about whether they like it. Besides that, I look at that like this. The best friends are the kind of friends that believe this stuff. If they don't believe this stuff, maybe those are some good friends to lose anyway. Let's go on. This is so important because right now it would sound like, boy, Russia could be hitting us with nuclear weapons any day now. And of course, I guess they could if it weren't for these prophecies. So let me explain these prophecies. Essentially, April 15, 2002, my wife, Prophet Leslie, had a dream where God spoke audibly to her in the dream. The summary part of the dream was that Arafat would go into the hospital. About 2 years later, 11/11/04, 3:30 a.m., he went into the hospital. But at the time, April 15, 2002, he wasn't even allowed outside of his compound. So it's a very risky thing, but nevertheless, it came to pass 2 years later. Meaning, the rest of this has been verified. It goes on to say Israel will give the Palestinians a state. The Palestinian state will be a temporary measure to allow the Israelis time to strengthen their military. How are they going to strengthen it? Oil will be discovered in Israel. The oil will make the Jews willing to fight for the land. Then Israel and America will go against most of the rest of the Arab world. And by the way, I think I know who's going to discover that massive amounts of oil in Israel. It's a prophecy teacher. Let's go on. Then, January 22 of 2006, God spoke to Leslie again, audibly, and gave her 7 newspaper headlines leading to the fall of America. Now, we do not know if this is the correct order or not. As a matter of fact, sometimes I think this is the order. So I'll put it in different order. At the bottom, number 7, she heard my voice quoting Dimitri Duduman, and it'll start with an internal revolution. Then I'll jump up to number 1. Omer ushers in Palestinian state. Catastrophe hits America. One of America's greatest times of need. Israel refuses help to America. Israel has attacked America, sends troops. You should be writing these down. Chaos reigns as Americans protest help to Israel. If you want to know when the Russians attack, check those off. I can verify those are accurate. Those are words of the Lord. So I can give you the happy news tonight. Russia is not going to attack America now. At least not in the next month or so. Probably not in 2022. Now, I don't know. We'll have to see. I mean, these things could all of a sudden tick off pretty quick. And then all of a sudden, America's taken out. Let's go on. Chris Reed verified it. You remember Chris Reed? Okay, so he had a vision where he saw a man standing there with a $50 bill. The man in front of the angel tore off a third part of the $50 bill. And then he's had people handing him newspaper articles. The first one was U.S. dollar drops 30% in value. That's probably a month or two, almost assuredly before the end of the year. Now, God did not tell me that, or that's not thus saith the Lord, that's just a big fat guess. Subtitle, Middle Eastern oil strikes deal with China instead of the U.S. So what happens if Saudi comes out and say, no, we're only selling oil now in yuan? What would happen to the dollar? It would crash, just like happened here. Next article, the perfect storm. Inflation reaches a new high. Next, food shortage crisis as wheat and bread imports are at a stalemate. So I'm telling you, best place to go for long-term storage food is josephskitchen.com. josephskitchen.com. Use the promo code Prophecy Club, and you get a $50 discount there too. Then, next is riots, civil unrest as citizens demand entitle checks, and an earthquake happened under his feet. Right after that, he saw Israel and Palestinian two-state solution reached. So this is kind of the same thing as she was told here. This one and this one fit together. American pieces. More states secede from the nation in rebellion to the federal government. Why would they secede? Because they're sick and tired of all of these illegals coming across the southern border and the federal government's not doing anything about it. So probably what you're going to see is Texas just say, hold it. We're seceding. We are not part of the United States. We're going to take care of our own border. We don't need you, United States. And they're probably not the last one to do it. Probably we'll see Arizona and maybe New Mexico do the same thing, maybe even other ones, maybe even Florida, who knows. I think that's the point. I think that's the point I'm trying to say. We are potentially, any day now, in a war with Russia. Actually, we're already in a war with Russia. But I'm saying it could be that here very, very soon, in a surprise nuclear attack in the early morning hours, all of a sudden our nation is destroyed. Such great riches have come to naught. In 1 hour, such great riches have come to naught. CornerstoneAssetMetals.com is where I'll send you if you're thinking about getting gold or silver. I think everybody should have at least a fistful of gold and a fistful of silver, because there could be a time when you pull up to get gasoline and they might not want to take your loaf of bread, but you pull out a gold coin or a silver coin, and you're probably able to get anything you want, even if the credit cards are down, even if the dollars are worthless. CornerstoneAssetMetals.com. CornerstoneAssetMetals.com. Next is, I'll send you to EMPShield.com. If you use the promo word prophecy, you get a $50 discount. When the electricity goes off or when some kind of a suitcase nuclear device goes off, this is supposed to be able to stop that device from destroying every computer chip in your car. Because if every computer chip is destroyed in your car these days, you couldn't possibly replace them all. Throw the car away. So, EMPShield.com, promo code prophecy.